Chapter 1. Selfish Genes. 1.1. We are merely the slaves of our genes. Human beings have never stopped seeking the meaning of life. In attempts to explain the world and our existence, we created all kinds of religions. We invented all kinds of superstitions. We designed all kinds of theories. However, they are all wrong. The correct answer surfaced the water for the first time in 1859, thanks to a guy called Charles Darwin. In sum, the sole existence of us serves as a bus for transporting genes in the river of time. All organisms are just survival machines created by the genes to serve themselves. All the behavior and characteristics of an organism are just meant for replicating more of the genes inside it. In other words, our existence and all our actions are just to pass on the genes. Who's the main subject of evolution? Not each individual person, but the genes inside. In Richard Dawkins' famous book, Selfish Genes, he redefined human existence from the perspective of the genes. We thought that we are independent individuals with an independent sense of freedom and free will. Richard rejected the idea and said the master of this world is actually the genes. We are merely machines driven by genes. Hence the saying, your motives in this life are simple but not simplistic, to live and to love. A joke summons this point very well. I'm just a walking dick. All my other body parts were formed just to create new dicks. I'm just an accessory that guarantees that my dick can survive and reproduce new dicks. Genetics loads the gun, personality and psychology aims it, experience causes you to pull the trigger. 1.2. Those are results of millions of years of evolution. All our behaviors can be explained from the perspective of evolution. Our standards for female beauty cues to women's reproductive capacity. Beauty may be in the eyes of the beholder, but those eyes and the minds behind the eyes have been shaped by millions of years of human evolution. Our mating mechanisms are the living fossils that reveal who we are and where we came from. These adaptations are human solutions to the problems posed by survival and reproduction. In his book, Evolutionary Psychology, David Buss said that in ancient human society, men take on the responsibilities of providing food and protection, and women take on the responsibilities of childbirth and raise the child. He would trade his survival resources for her reproduction resources. Although our survival and reproduction environment has been greatly improved in the modern era, food is no longer scarce, and there's no danger of being eaten by a tiger. All those things greatly weaken the roles adapted by men and women for the past 200,000 years of Homo sapiens history. Our preference for sweets and fats is an example of an evolved psychological mechanism. Throughout most of human evolutionary history, getting enough calories was a serious problem. Malnutrition and starvation were common. In this environment, those who, for reasons of random genetic mutation, had a taste for sweets and fats, which contain higher calories, were better off physically than those who did not have such a taste. Those who had a sweet tooth, therefore lived longer, led healthier lives, and produced more healthy offspring than those who did not. They in turn passed on their genetically influenced taste to their offspring over many thousands of generations. The Savannah Principle states that the human brain has difficulty comprehending and dealing with entities and situations that did not exist in the ancestral environment. The Savannah Principle suggests that we continue to have currently maladaptive preferences for sweets and fats, and as a result become obese because our brain cannot readily comprehend the supermarkets, the abundance of food in general, and indeed agriculture, none of which existed in the ancestral environment. 1.3. Examples of evolutionary adaptations. Evolution has produced elegant solutions to many problems. We perform those actions subconsciously. We involve taste buds that are sensitive to fat, salt, and sugar, which are all important minerals we need to survive. We evolved sweat glands and shivering mechanisms to solve the problems of extreme hot and cold. Emotions such as fear and rage that motivate either flight or combat with predators or aggressive competitors. A complex immune system to combat diseases and parasites. Hunger mechanisms to solve the problem of providing nutrients. If we stumble physically, our body's systems react instantly to catch us or minimize the pain of the fall. If we bump our head into something, we suddenly withdraw our head. We close our eyes when there's a splash of water. Nosebleeds are meant to reduce blood pressure in the brain to prevent cerebral hemorrhage. Coughing is to remove dirt from the respiratory system. Yawning is involuntary deep breathing because of the lack of oxygen. Passing out is the equivalent to forced shutdown on computers. It's a mechanism to protect the nervous system. Pain and fear are the most efficient self-protection mechanisms. Pain sensation helps people to establish a value system, such as being burned by fire. You know how painful it is. Then the brain uses fear to warn you not to touch it again. Crying is a natural way to release anxiety through the chemicals in the tears. The testicles are always one high and one low, so that you avoid crashing them while walking. Emotions. Genes manipulate us through emotions. Every emotion has its significance in its existence. Darwin said in his book, The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, that humans and animals evolved emotions to better adapt to the environment, seek benefits and avoid harm, and maximize the chances of survival and reproduction. All emotions are merely the tools created by our genes in order to communicate its desires, to further their goals. All your emotions are nothing but signals from genes to control you, to act with its will. Being happy is doing something that is beneficial to its S and R value. On the contrary, it will punish you by secreting all kinds of chemicals in your brains to make you feel sad when you did something that violated the genes' will. What supports us clenching teeth and fighting till this day is not goodwill and love, but it is often our jealousy, greed, vanity, pride, jealousy, unwillingness, dissatisfaction, and revenge. All your growth depends on these negative emotions, not your goodness. Colorful emotions are an important part of our lives. In the long-term evolutionary process, these emotions have become a natural part of us. Like breathing and heartbeat, they can also be produced without the participation of autonomous consciousness and cerebral cortex. These emotions can lead to different physiological changes, prompting us behaviors that adopt the environment. Regret, a feeling that prevents us from making the same mistake again in the future. Anger, combat with predators or aggressive competitors. Fear, stay away from danger. Disgust, do not eat toxic or bacterial food. Loneliness, it's a protection mechanism that warns us not to stay alone for too long, because at the end of the day, humans are social animals. We cannot survive on our own. The list goes on forever. But there's one problem here. The evolution of humans is very slow, and modern people are very similar to their ancestors from 10,000 years ago in terms of physiological characteristics. However, the modern society's living environment is drastically different, and human evolution has not kept up with the pace of life changes. Our characteristic traits and thinking patterns are still at prehistoric levels, so there comes many conflicts. And for example, babies are not afraid of guns, but are afraid of snakes. In 1998, guns killed more than 30,000 Americans. Snakes killed fewer than 24 people. We now have an abundance of sugar, fats, and all kinds of food. But our brain still thinks we might starve the next day, so we'd better stock up on those precious nutrients. That's why modern people are getting more obese than ever. We consume pornography because our mind can't tell the screen images and real women. Our brains secretly consider the characters in TV series as our friends and watch the same show over and over again. 1.4. Some deeper significations. Using evolutionism, we can answer a few deeper philosophical questions that have always baffled human beings throughout history. Is human nature inherently good or evil? Ren Xing Ben Shan, Haisha Xing Ben Yi. We've seen real-life cases from both sides. Someone who is loving and caring with others did inhuman cruelties. Humans are not a special species separated from animals. All human behaviors follow the laws of nature and the laws of animals' behavioral patterns. Animal nature is human nature, and there is no inherent good or evil in nature. The question itself is not valid in the first place. Humans are neither good nor evil. Asking whether human nature is good or evil is like trying to measure the length of a ruler in units of weight. In order to further the goals of the genes, we are only instinctively seeking benefits and avoiding harm, pursuing whatever things that are beneficial to our survival and reproduction. When the temptation is big enough, any person can become a devil. 2. What is happiness? The evolution of the human brain is not meant for discovering the truth, but to gain survival advantages. Happiness is merely an emotion that genes use to manipulate us into achieving things that we want us to do. We feel happiness when we fall in love because the genes are awarding you for finding a suitable mate to produce. We feel sadness when we lose our job because we got deprived of survival resources. We feel happy when we get new clothes because it enhances our attractiveness so that we can attract higher quality mates. We feel desperate when our children die because they are the younger generation that carries our genes. Now we face the dire case of having our genes completely wiped out from the gene pool. Genes just want to save and multiply themselves. It doesn't matter whether we are happy or unhappy. John von Neumann once said, "It is just as foolish to complain that people are selfish and treacherous as it is to complain that the magnetic field does not increase unless the electric field has a curl. It's ridiculous, because both are just laws of nature." We are built to be effective animals, not happy ones. 3. Now, with the advancement of biology, we have learned a lot more about genetics. Therefore, a shocking conclusion might be that a large percentage of your life has already been determined by your genetics. Of course, I am talking beyond your hair color or height or health or athleticism, way beyond these. People always claim that if they worked hard, then they would achieve all their goals ECT. Like if they could compensate for their innate disadvantages by working extra hard. But what if the ability to focus for long periods of time is also a genetic trait? What if the ability to put in the actual effect is also determined genetically? Some people just can't resist instant gratification, right? Like that 1997 movie, Gattaca. Chapter 2. Rational Thinking and Intuitive Thinking. This theory of rational thinking and intuitive thinking has been explored by many people, with each of them coming up with their own names for it, but essentially, they are talking about the same thing. In this chapter, we'll go over all of them. By the end, you'll understand how us humans think. 第一 triune San Zhong Now. This theorem is proposed by Paul D. MacLean. He suggested that our brains consist of 3 parts: human, mammal, reptile brains. With the outer brain, the later in time it developed in the history of human species. Reptile brain is something that's programmed in our brains. It follows instincts and intuition. Insects and lizards only have reptile brains. It controls heartbeat, breathing, subconsciously dodge away from the ball flying at you, reflect after touching fire, all kinds of basic things that keep us alive. You want to eat when you're hungry, want to drink when you're thirsty. This is pure instinct. Mammal brains are used to handle emotions. Animals like cats and dogs have mammal brains. It's used to express various emotions and feelings like excitement or anger or sadness. And only the humans develop the human brain. It's used for rational thinking, logical inference, planning for future, and imaginations. Facing problems, our default response is to first use the reptile, then the mammal, and finally the human brain. So, it's true that humans aren't thinking machines with emotions. We're emotional beings that can sometimes think. 人类不是有情感的思考机器，而是可以思考的感情机器。点 are System 1 and System 2，系统1和系统2。Daniel Kahneman, in his classic book Thinking Fast and Slow, split the human mind into System 1 and System 2. System 1 relies on intuition and is affected by many biases and is often irrational, but it is fast and is often the dominating way of thinking. System 2 is more rational, but requires active control and is often overridden by System 1. He said, "Forget about the left and right brain that semi-intelligent self-help books described. What's more important is the difference between intuitive and rational thinking. Both have legitimate applications. The intuitive mind is swift, spontaneous, and energy-saving. Rational thinking is slow, demanding, and energy-guzzling. By using System 1, you can spend the lowest amount of energy to handle all kinds of things. You will startle when you see a snake and run when you see a tiger. There is no need to go through the analysis and then run. but the con of such speed thinking is that we might make incorrect decisions because our intuition doesn't help much when we are faced with complex problems. So, while facing important decisions, you must learn to restrain your feelings and use reasoning instead. 2.3 Elephant and Elephant Rider, Shang Yu Qi Shang Ren. There is a famous metaphor in psychology, elephant and elephant rider. It says that there are actually two selves in each person's body. One is the sensual self, like an unruly elephant, with great strength, and is controlled by emotions. One is the rational self, like a rational elephant rider. He rides on the back of the elephant, holding the reins in his hand. It seems like he's directing the elephant, but in fact, the elephant rarely listened to him. This metaphor is created by Jonathan Haidt in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis. He described our emotional and intuition thinking is like an elephant, and our rational thinking is like a person riding on an elephant. Many times we think we are making decisions with reason, believing that you make the decision after careful considerations, but in fact, it is the elephant who really decides where we are going. 2. Intuitive and rational thinking. 直觉思考与理性思维. It is also called reflexive brain and reflective brain. As Rolf Dobelli described in his book, The Art of Thinking Clearly Intuitive and Rational. Relying on intuition and experience allows us to make quick judgments and choices. This mechanism has no doubt provided us great advantages in the history of human evolution, because back in ancient times, it was necessary to make a quick decision in order to survive. People always have a tendency to desire a clear conclusion on anything. Why? Because it saves the bandwidth and energy consumption of the brain. Evolution and natural selection didn't shape the human brain for perfect rationality, but for maximizing survival and reproduction. In other words, humans seek survival first, truth second. So actually, don't hate on stereotyping. It's the result of millions of years of evolution that helped us to survive to this day. Although not 100% accurate, but it's mostly accurate and has some truth in it. Behavioral economists speak of availability and familiarity. Psychologists talk about vividness, salience, anchoring, priming, and mere exposure. Marketers emphasize memorability and repetition. All these concepts are based on the central tendency of our automatic, non-conscious mental system. I'm like my ancestors. I stereotype, it's faster. Chapter 3. Genes Expression in Mating Behaviors. 3.1. The ultimate goal is to reproduce. Love is the best gift from heaven to mankind. Since then, mating and reproduction become poetic and romantic. 汪说，爱情是上天送给人类最好的礼物，从此繁殖变得诗情画意。汪说。Personally, I think there is really nothing to show off how many women you've slept with or who good you are in bed. All those things are nothing but chemicals in your brain. The only thing that matters is how many kids you have and how well they are raised so that they can then have more offspring. Therefore, the sweetest words I can possibly hear from a woman is not how good I'm in bed, how rich I am, or how handsome, how tall, or how talented I am in something, but it's one simple yet hefty sentence. I want to have your baby, or I want to make babies with you. So in my worldview, if I pursue women just for sex, never for a child, then there's really no difference than drug addicts looking for dopamine hits and other chemicals in the fictitious brain, then left with nothing tangible at the end of life. In his book, The Evolution of Desire, evolutionary psychologist David Buss summarizes the mutual attraction between the sexes as the pursuit and exchange of survival value and reproduction value between men and women. Richard Dawkins said, any relationship between the sexes comes from the game of egoism, which means purely seeking self-interest in terms of evolution. Reproduction is the sole goal for which human beings are designed. Everything else is a means to that end. I have no patience with anything spiritual or supernatural. It's all bullshit. My religion is Darwin. Love for me was simply an evolutionary impulse that enabled human beings to fulfill their two primary objectives: to survive and replicate. When you approach a hot girl, your DNA is like, hold up! Sexy ass bitch, 12 o'clock! Fill this motherfucker's brain with internal cocaine so that he has the mojo to get her naked and shoot cum into her pussy to make more replications of us. In human language, this means that both men and women are driven by an overriding genetic instinct to get the maximum number of healthy children into the next generation. More grandchildren means more copies of your genes. At the end of the day, we are all simply humans who want to survive and reproduce. Attraction is simply S&R value judging mechanism. When we say we are attracted to someone, what we mean is we recognize in them their ability to help us in the passing on of our genes or looking after our survival. We are essentially like traders. What people call self-improvement is nothing more than increasing their value in the eyes of the opposite sex and also increasing the survival probability of their own genes. Members of both sexes look for traits that increase their own chance to survive and reproduce. Women are looking for the grounded man to help them survive and reproduce, while men are looking for a healthy female to reproduce with. Let's be real blunt. Women have sex with men because they feel it will benefit them. It's purely out of self-interest. We all deceive, men fake to be committed in order to achieve sex, women apply makeup and boobs enlargement jobs to appear more sexually attractive, aka gaining more mating value. From an evolutionary perspective, selecting a mate is the most important decision a person can make in life. Once I went hiking on a hard mountain and observed something very interesting. I noticed that guys will pretend they're less tired than they actually are and would exert so much extra force and energy to pretend that they are fit, they would go into beast mode just to impress the girls. Because having good stamina is a plus to his mating value in the eyes of the girls. On the other hand, what's most important to girls is beauty and relationship with her social group. That's why we see the same girl who was already exhausted after reaching the top can jump off a rock multiple times just to get an awesome Instagram picture that will receive many likes. When harsh times happen, let's say there is a war, you would see males and females immediately revert to their traditional gender roles. It's like we are manipulated by some invisible strings in the sky. Some invisible force controls everything we do. Well, yeah, it is our genes. We are willing to pay so much extra effort to do things that will enhance or at least our mating value, even just superficially. Like Rick and Morty said, what people call love, it's just a chemical reaction that compels animals to breed. It hits hard, then it slowly fades, leaving you stranded in a failing marriage. I did it, or parents are gonna do it. Break the cycle, Morty. What's the fundamental power that pushes human species value to this day, this height? It's the never-ending producing desire and driving force of survival of the genes. Even after establishing a relationship, neither sex will stop looking at other potential mates. This sounds heartbreaking for those who believe in pure love, but doing so makes a lot of sense for the genes. Because of the uncertainty of the future, their spouse might cheat, might unexpectedly die, might be expelled from the tribe, might be unable to reproduce. The ancestors who believe in eternal forever love, only infatuated with one partner, will have less chance to leave offspring, and gradually we are all the descendants of those who always have backups. It may be disconcerting to acknowledge it, but most people continue to assess outside options while in a committed relationship. Men's preference for young, attractive women do not disappear once they make a long-term commitment to a mate, nor does women's attention to the status and prestige of other men. The picture is not a very pretty one, but humans were not designed by natural selection to coexist in mating bliss. They were designed for individual survival and genetic reproduction. The psychological mechanisms featured by these ruthless evolutionary criteria are innately selfish, yet effective. The prerequisite for a good marriage, it seems to me, is the license to be unfaithful. Carl Jung, 1910. Love is that, if there is no better choice, only then I will accompany you till death. 爱情就是，如果没有更好的选择了，我才陪你到天荒地老。Accusing a girl for being a gold digger is meaningless. It's no more superficial than us guys like young, beautiful females. It's meaningless. It's how we humans as animals work. It's how your grandparents meet each other. If I have the opportunity to choose between having sex with 10 different women or creating a baby through a test tube with one woman, I will definitely choose the latter. Because in the end, the pleasure in your brain when you achieve orgasm, when you have somebody to warm you on a cold night, are merely dopamine and other chemicals in your brain. They go away and never last. In contrast, your offspring will last as long as the human species lasts. 3.2. What kind of males females prefer? Power/status/wealth. Henry Kissinger once remarked that power is a potent aphrodisiac. Women desire men who command a high position in society because social status is a universal cue to the control of resources. Along with status come better food, more abundant territory, and superior healthcare. Greater social status bestows on children social opportunities missed by the children of lower-ranked males. Male children in families of higher social status worldwide typically have access to more mates and better quality mates. In one study of 186 societies ranging from the Mbuti Pygmies of Africa to the Aleut of Alaska, high-status men invariably had greater wealth and more wives than lower-status men, and their children were better nourished. A man's ability and willingness to provide a woman with resources are central to his mate value, central to her selection of him as a partner, central to the tactics that men use to attract mates, and central to the tactics that men use to retain mates. Women prize dispositions in men which commit their resources selectively rather than indiscriminately. Dependability, emotional stability, industriousness, and ambition are not the only personal qualities that signal the acquisition and steadiness of resources. All these attractive male cues, economic resources, social status, and older age, add up to one thing: the ability of a man to acquire and control resources that women can use for themselves and for their children. Why are diamonds a girl's best friend? Because she needs to differentiate males who are willing to invest in a woman and her offspring in the long run, and those who are only looking for cheap thrills for the night and are likely to desert her after having sex. The diamond is a great courtship gift because it lacks intrinsic value. That's why buying her groceries or hardware is too useful to be romantic. Any man who would buy diamonds for a woman presents a strong indicator of making a large investment in her. Therefore, women use receiving diamonds as a screening tool. Flowers, another favorite gift for women, are also relatively expensive and lack intrinsic value. Of course, diamonds and flowers are beautiful, but they are beautiful precisely because they are expensive and lack intrinsic value, which is why it is mostly women who think flowers and diamonds are beautiful. Their beauty lies in their inherent uselessness. This is why Volvos and potatoes are not beautiful. Female attraction is an emotional, unconscious reaction to the characteristics and behavior you present to her. It is not a conscious decision. The characteristics you present to the women are honest signs of whether or not you present the qualities of a good partner. Women have to make quick decisions about whether or not you're a good partner for her, since there are many men to choose from who are pursuing her. She wants to select the best one. Women are programmed to identify traits in a man such as strength, power, and assertiveness, caring, kindness, which they see as beneficial to them for survival or providing a reproductive advantage for child raising. Bad women love men's money and power. Good women love men's self-confidence, leniency, energy, and optimism due to having money and power. Fortunately, it is a different path, yet the same destination. Wang Shuo. 痞女人爱男人的钱和权，好女人爱男人因有钱和有权而产生的自信、宽大、精力充沛、乐观进取。还好，殊途同归。Wang 说 She seeks commitment to ensure future access to his resources. We can speculate that women don't like men whose lives revolve around them, because those men are less likely to climb dominance hierarchies and amass resources. Too focused on women means less focused on other life endeavors, which are important for yielding resources. For example, the charm of men is usually related to the wide jaw, which means higher male hormones, and male hormones have a considerable correlation with aggressiveness. Among animals, female animals also tend to choose aggressive male animals as spouses, so that female animals and their children can survive in a harsh environment and be protected. Conversely, men like women with pointed jaws because men do not like women with a lot of male hormones. This aesthetic trend of opposite appearances between men and women, evolutionary biology is called gender dimorphism. Men in general prefer a nice hip-to-waist ratio. Women in general prefer a nice debt-to-asset ratio. Steven Pinker says that one of the best predictors of a man's wife's attractiveness is his income. Attractive men were preferred until they were dressed with fast food uniforms. Then they were not preferred anymore. The prince would marry Cinderella, but the millionaire women never marry Dave the janitor. Women do not primarily judge men by appearance, but rather by how we may be of use to them for their survival. 3.3 Mating Strategies for Women and Man. There are 3 different mating strategies for women. 1. Promiscuity. Get fucked by the lover and have his kids. Because the lover is a womanizer, his sons are likely to be womanizers too. This will yield the woman an immense number of grandchildren. The downside: the lover is less likely to stick around and raise the kids, meaning they're less likely to survive in the ancestral environment. 2. Monogamy. Marry a provider and raise a family with him. This will give the woman's offspring the best possible chance of surviving. The problem? The beta provider's sons will probably be betas themselves, thus producing fewer grandchildren than the sexy sons of the alpha. 3. Hybrid. This rogue third strategy is a hybrid of promiscuity and monogamy. A woman unconsciously following this genetic strategy will get fucked by the alpha, endowing her offspring with his superior genes, then deceive a beta into raising the children as his own. Assuming the beta does not detect deception, this is the highest yielding possible strategy. This is because the woman gets the benefit of womanizer genes and a lot of parental investment. Now let's see how the males play this game. Evolutionary psychologists have found that men have 2 different strategies that can maximize their success rate of reproducing offspring. Nice guy strategy. Go into a committed relationship, investing everything he has into the women and their kids. Or bad guy strategy. Have short-term relationships with many women and do not invest much into any specific women or offspring. Maybe all men want to adopt the bad man strategy, but they are restricted by the women's choices. Men are not the choosers, women are. Men can't have sex with whomever they want, but women can. Men offer commitment in exchange for exclusive sexual access to her reproductive system. The unwritten exchange is, I will provide for you and the children, and you only sleep with me. Nobody has children with another person as an act of charity. Biologically and fundamentally, we're selfish. Men are attracted to young, beautiful, fertile women, and women are attracted to older men with more resources. One is not more selfish than the other. We're always looking for the best possible deals for ourselves. We have seen that men can gain from feigning love, affection, and resources. Women instead can gain by positioning themselves as pious, serious, and faithful. So handsome and rich guys can get a lot of short-term sexual opportunities, so they can use bad guy strategy. But ugly and poor men have no choice, regardless if they want to or not. The only way they can achieve successful reproduction is to either accumulate lots of wealth or find a long-term partner and invest heavily in their offspring using good man strategy. On the contrary, male strategy is more direct. That is, try to have sex with as many fertile women as possible. Male strategy: women have the right to decide whether to mate. Sexual relations can only happen with the consent of the female, and the mating target is selected by the female, and the male cannot determine the time and target. If a man wants to get the woman he desires, then he must dominate the world. But for women to do the same thing, she only needs to do the hair first. For a man to walk into a bar and have his choice of any woman he wants, he would have to be the ruler of the world. For a woman to have the same power over men, she'd have to do her makeup. Men are after quantity, and women are after quality. A man is basically as faithful as his options. Chris Rock. From the perspective of adaptation, the most favorable situation for women is to find a rich man who loves her very much and is willing to devote all his resources to her and their kids. The most favorable situation for a man is only to invest a small amount of resources to obtain sex and use the remaining resources to find other spouses or to solve other problems, including obtaining social status, power, gain more money. As you can see, men and women are in a zero-sum game. Our differences in evolutionary strategies can easily lead to conflicts between the two sexes regarding commitment. The conflict between two sexes' mating strategy is like a game of trying to balance two balls on top of each other. People always say that successful men can't resist lust temptations. That's bullshit. All men cannot resist temptation. It's just that women don't seduce the unsuccessful men. The standard narrative of sexual evolution goes like this. Boy meets girl. Assess mate. He looks for youth, fertility, fidelity, she for wealth, status, health, and parental investment. They mate and form a long-term bond. He keeps an eye on her and on other girls to impregnate. She's wary he doesn't fall in love with another woman and keeps an eye on genetically superior men to have a quick fling, possibly during ovulation. Men's jealousy is especially attuned to rivals who have status and resources. Women's jealousy is especially attuned to rivals who are physically attractive. One man said, "The thought of my ex having sex with another was excruciating. I would stay awake with this thought going through my head and could feel my temperature rise to boiling point." One woman said that, "We're with girls. If they are pretty, or if he says they are pretty, I don't like it at all." 3.4. What female traits males seek and why. 1. Long hair. Men all over the world of different ages and different countries all prefer girls with long hair. Evolutionary psychology explained this phenomenon. A female's hair grows only about 15 centimeters a year, so a beautiful head of hair needs to be taken care of for at least 3 or 4 years. You have to know that hair is very delicate. If you have a serious illness, it will likely turn pale and dry, or even fall off. When females age, the hair loss is significant. So when our ancestors of the Stone Age saw a girl with bright long hair, it's a great indicator that the girl had been in good health in the past 3 or 4 years and had not experienced any serious illness, and also relatively young, which indicates she has strong fertility. Additionally, hair also serves as the main auxiliary organ for the distribution of pheromones, and men are very susceptible to such stimulating pheromones, and that's why guys like beautiful long hair. 2. Big breasts. Why do men like women with big breasts? On the surface, the answer seems straightforward. Since the boob's main purpose is to breastfeed babies, the larger size must indicate more milk and thus more nutrients available for feeding the baby. However, surprisingly, that's not the case. Studies have found that women with big breasts do not yield more milk. Instead, big breasts serve as an indicator of youth. Big breasts are much easier to identify the age. Why? Breasts drop and sag as the women age, and bigger breasts make it much easier to notice the droop, as it's much harder to judge on small breasts. So big and firm breasts are signals screaming fertility, and thus no wonder all men lust after big boobs. Also, I don't know if you have noticed, but regardless of age, young or old, as soon as women have children, their boobs drop like crazy, all the way to their stomach. 3. Light-colored eyes pupil. Why do men like women with blue eyes? Because when people see something they like, his pupils will dilate, and pupil dilation is the most obvious in blue eyes. In this way, it is much easier for a man to observe if the woman has dilated pupils, to judge whether she is willing to mate with him or simply just scamming his resources. This also helps men to better read the women, as our eyes conceal a lot of social cues information. Thus, this preference is retained. 4. Thick lips. I don't know if you have seen those typical Dubai Russian girl faces. They have the same nose job, same bleached straight blonde hair, same sausage lips. For women, the thickness of lips is related to the estrogen level in her body. Full and plump lips are indicators of high estrogen level, and high estrogen level means she is very fertile and prolific. 5. White skin. Among all races, women on average have lighter skin than men. This is because women need to provide calcium for the baby during pregnancy, and vitamin D provides calcium. The whiter skin allows the female to absorb more vitamin D. So, we can also say that the ultimate reason why men like women with light skin is because they can provide stronger calcium to the next generation. 6. Good health. In humans, we all like good health, which signifies physical appearance, a lively mood, ample facial expression, sprightly gait, and so on, because compared to laziness and lethargic, being lively and active are calorically more costly, and only healthy people have the extra calories to do this. 7. Men like large female hips because wide pelvis allow giving birth easier. A lot of fat on ass means good nutrition and fertility. On the contrary, we were repulsed by signs of ill health, such as open sores, lesions, unusual pallor, irritated skin. Such things are universally regarded as unattractive because they imply STD, bad grooming, unclean lifestyle, pathological behaviors, which all are traits adverse to our goal of reproducing healthy offspring. The list can go on and on. But in essence, all these attractive female traits are indicators of fertility that men can use to produce his heirs. And you can see most of the traits mentioned above are physical appearance, and correspondingly, women are very well aware of the importance of their appearance on the mating market. Let me illustrate. Women go on diets to improve their figures. They put great importance on their haircuts, be it dyeing color, shaping style, or extending length. They spend lots of money on their nails and makeup. They spend way more time to groom themselves than men. They lie out in the sun or go to tanning salons to achieve a healthy-looking glow. They use deceptive tactics to manipulate their appearance. They go through plastic surgery on their faces. They do breast enlargement surgeries. They wear padded bras to appear bustier. They wear makeup to increase their facial attractiveness. They wear false fingernails to make their hands appear longer and their fingers more elegant. They wear heels to accentuate leg length, protrusion of breasts and ass. They spend an ungodly amount of time on choosing and picking clothes to wear. The list can go on and on. And if you learn to view things from the perspective of evolution, many modern female behaviors are easily explained. For example, women are more likely than men to go shopping as a coping tactic. Shopping for new clothes or makeup or going to a beauty salon can enhance a woman's self-esteem precisely because such behaviors increase her physical attractiveness, paving the way for her to attract higher quality males in the mating market. The female shirts and jeans are more body shaping. Another great example is yoga pants. That's hot. They look upward when taking selfies to appear more vulnerable and feminine. They put hands on their side waist and pull in their stomachs and hold in their waists to enhance their waist-to-hip ratio. This reminds me of a meme I saw online. Women wear heels to make them look taller, then squat on photos to make them look shorter. It sounds so contradictory in terms of height, but their purpose is to make their figure look more curvy and thus more attractive in the eyes of males. Whenever women say they're dressed up for themselves, you know they are straight up just lying. In conclusion, for women, beauty is value. Beauty is everything, and being beautiful is fucking awesome. The world would revolve around you. You're not a bad person for noticing beautiful women. You are not a superficial person for preferring to have a pretty girlfriend over an ugly girlfriend. It is completely normal and natural. Men look for fertility cues in a partner. That is a deeply rooted evolutionary instinct that is imprinted into our biology. Your father is like that. Your grandfather is like that. Your existence right now is a living proof of the success of this mating strategy. 3.5. Everything a man does is for attracting women. Everything a man does is for attracting women. Here's my personal story. Before I turned 20, I liked and tried many different skills. I wanted to do flare and air flare in breakdancing. I wanted to land a triple backflip in gymnastics. I wanted to do a super rhythmic beatbox routine. I wanted to do a side flip on a snowboard. I wanted to solve a Rubik's Cube in under 20 seconds. I wanted to hold a guitar and sing in front of a crowd. You can call it exploring hobbies, but honestly, I was just trying to attract girls. And all of this was subconscious. I believed deep down that if I could master these things, I'd become more attractive to the opposite sex. There are countless hobbies and professions in the world. Unless you do something purely because you love it, most hobbies end up being tied to the hope of increasing your attractiveness. As you grow older, some hobbies, like solving a Rubik's Cube, don't help much with dating. And among all hobbies, the one with the broadest target audience and the strongest impact is money. So with limited time, if you have to choose carefully what you invest in, for mating, money has the highest leverage. For me, all sports can still be seen as things I do even if they had zero effect on attracting girls. But the reality is, even if none of the sports I like involve performing for others, they still involve competing with people. If you're better than the others, it still proves you're superior to your competitors, which still increases your attractiveness. Most people never realize this, but their desire to stand out in their field is really just an attempt to raise their mating value. Now that I understand this, I've decided to skip all the fluff and go straight for money. I know political power and social maneuvering aren't my strengths, so I'll play to my advantages. This Darwinian, evolutionary way of seeing the world has basically solidified for me, and I doubt it will change in this lifetime. It feels like the closest approach to the truth. Humans do much of what they do, directly or indirectly, knowingly or usually unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, in order to achieve reproductive success, in order to have reproductive access to a larger number of women. Reproductive access to women is the goal. Career is but one means. To ask why the President of the United States would have a sexual encounter with a young woman is like asking why someone who worked very hard to earn a large sum of money would then spend it. The purpose of earning money is to spend it. The purpose of becoming the president or anything else men do is to have a larger number of attractive women with whom to mate. Nothing is as desirable for a male as an attractive female is, and obtaining women is male's greatest motivator. Women truly are the greatest motivation there is for males. A lot of good music and useful inventions would never have come to fruition if males knew that they could just go straight after the women they wanted without being successful in society first. The underlying motive of all human behavior is reproductive, regardless of whether direct or indirect methods, conscious or unconscious moves. In fact, I would say everything that men do, their underlying fundamental motivations of all males' behavior, are means of trying to achieve this goal. Alan Miller wrote this in his book, Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters. Human preferences and desires for an ideal spouse are the result of the profound influence of evolutionary psychology. After all, what you want is not the core of the issue. The goal of achieving your genes' widespread success is the focus. Evolutionary psychology also conveys another message that many human social behaviors, be it politics, religion, or economy, all things are ultimately due to sex. The purpose of men is to have sex with as many women as possible. They go to wars to achieve so, they do scientific research to achieve so. Men do everything they do in order to get laid, to impress women so that they will sleep with them. From sports to music, politics, scientific research, and fitness, crimes, any career, every line you can achieve success in, become a champion, become excellent in the industry, seeking fame, making big money, and even committing crimes are just means. As men, let's be honest, most men will do just about anything to attract and maintain the romantic and sexual companionship of an attractive, desirable female. Realistically, nothing will motivate a man to improve his physical appearance, his level of career success, his education, or his financial status more than the desire to attract females. Billionaires are the same. They like to win. Larry Ellison racing his yacht from Australia to Tasmania, Steve Fawcett flying a balloon around the world, Dennis Tito paying $20 million for a trip to space on a Russian rocket. All of them, one way or another, were showing off, Conniff writes. To put it in the biological context, they were engaging in display behavior. Animals do it all the time, and their displays, like ours, fall loosely into two categories. They show off with fine feathers, and they show off with risky behavior. In fact, some men would go so far as to say that if it weren't for women, they wouldn't be interested in the world much at all. This is why men throughout history have had to conquer foreign lands, win battles and wars, compose symphonies, author books, write sonnets, paint portraits and cathedral ceilings, make scientific discoveries, play in rock bands, and write new computer software in order to impress women so that they will agree to have sex with them. There would be no civilizations, no art, no literature, no music, no Beatles, no Microsoft if sex and mating were a male choice. Men have built and destroyed civilizations in order to impress women so that they might say yes. Women are the reason men do everything. 三点六 man's obsession of sex, 男人对性的执念. A joke goes like this. When astronauts pee in space, they use a bag that looks like a condom. The bag comes in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. But NASA found that astronauts always choose the large size, even if they slide down and pee pours out while using it. Eventually, they renamed the 3 models as Big, Super Large, Super Duper Huge, and finally solved this problem. So damn clever. Another Reddit thread asked, question, is there only sex in a man's head? Answer, actually, if it is not for sex, men prefer to play with men. A woman with high reproductive capacity would be extremely valuable in evolutionary currencies. When a woman agrees to align with you sexually, she is agreeing to trade her replication value for your value. The surest way to jeopardize a relationship is to renege on the fundamental deal. Women are promising paternity to the male, so any sex with other men will rock a relationship to its foundation. Men are promising to devote their energy to the relationship, so the biggest betrayal is a substantial diversion of time and money to other women. Men are preoccupied with the things that can help them express power by creating results and achieving their goals. Gold diggers, women who promise to mate in exchange for a gift, but then go ghost without mating after receiving it. Men are more eager for social status because social status contributes greatly to the reproduction of men, because a male can have theoretically unlimited offspring in his lifetime, whereas a woman can only have a few dozen maximum. In Blast's research, he found that when men found that they could not get sex from the relationship, then they would choose to give up this relationship. Women are willing to become pure friends with the opposite sex because women can get benefits out of it, like help, protection, support, and companionship from their male friends without having to pay sexual obligation. Men are just the opposite, except for a small amount of companionship and contact opportunities. Men pursue sexual relations with women from beginning to end relentlessly. This difference between men and women determines that there's no pure friendship between men and women, except if the woman is super ugly or old something. Boys can be reconciled 5 minutes after the fight, but girls will still hate each other after 20 years. Men's obsession with virgins. In the end, the concept of chastity is to protect the blood relationship, making sure the kid is his. Mommy's baby. Daddy's maybe. If you go back to being an emperor in the past, your living standard may not be as good as it is now, but you would have unlimited girls to mate with, which is a fucking awesome perk. Why do men always think a girl likes him, whereas she doesn't? This is called the sexual overperception bias, whereby men possess mind-reading biases designed to minimize the cost of missed sexual opportunities. This kind of cognitive error can be used to explain men's usual overinterpretation of women's sexual hints. Men tend to exaggerate female sexual cues to minimize the cost of misunderstanding sexual cues, thus always falsely infer that women are sexually interested in them when they merely smile, incidentally touch their arm, or are simply friendly. Because rather than being rejected, it's genetically more costly to miss such an opportunity to produce offspring. However, I'm not saying women are always victims. Women know this, and they exploit men's sexual overperception bias for their own gains. Women significantly more than men use smiling and flirting as a means of eliciting special treatment from men, even though they had no interest in having sex with those men. Chapter 4. Outro. This is the game rule of this world. This is the truth of this world. It is so simple, yet so harsh. I define the question, collect evidence, build hypotheses, continuously trial and error theories, trace all the way to the source, and finally show you the truth of the world that's hiding behind all the superficial phenomena, and tell you that the meaning of life is just survival and reproduction. Science is unlike religion. It's true whether you believe it or not. 科学不像宗教或迷信，不管你信不信，它都灵。In the end, I want to leave you with a philosophical question. I have always known that each of us is a slave of genes and has always been obediently behaving in accordance with its will, approaching its goals using any method we have. But there's one special moment that I suddenly thought, do I must obey the gene? What if I choose not to obey? That was the first time I questioned and doubted, seeing for the first time that I can choose to jump out of the box and not obey it. It's not a matter of how to better achieve its goals, but whether should I try to achieve its goal at all. That feeling is like a pious religious person questioning his religion for the first time, or like Neo in The Matrix questioned for the first time whether he's living in reality. Yes, I used to think that since the purpose of genes is to produce a lot of offspring, all I have to do is to have more children with different women when I have the financial resources and intention. When I was in my 20s, I wanted to have as many children with as many beautiful women as possible. However, none of these girls that I'm dealing with in daily life are qualified, and all sex is practically useless because I'm having sex not to conceive, but purely for fun. But what if I don't obey the genes? Do the opposite. Break the evolutionary pre-installed programs that's wired in my brain. That'll be crazy.